Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right everybody, thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show I read a lot of comic books, and I let you know what I thought about them, and we always start with the pick of the week. And I do want to highlight dynamicforces.com real quick. Check out their website. They got great limited edition covers, CGC books, signed books, remarks, amazing content over at dynamicforces.com. And be sure to enter Robbie at your cart and save 10%. And this week's pick of the week is The Crimson Cage, issue number 1 from AWA Upshot, written by John Lees with artwork by Alex Cormack, coloring by Ashley Cormack, lettering by Hassan Otsman El Howe. This book is frickin' awesome. John Lees and Alex Cormack have teamed up again. They are the team behind Sync, which is making its long-awaited return soonish, dig. In fact, the one-shot is available on Kickstarter right now. But yo, this book is awesome. We had Alex and John on the show a couple months ago when this book was getting announced close to FOC. And I got a chance to read it then. And dude, reading it again today, holy cow, I love this book. What is it? It's Macbeth, but with like 1980s territorial wrestling. It is a fantastic book, right? That may sound like, oh, really? Wrestling done by way of Macbeth? That could be cheesy. It's not. Everything about wrestling is true. It's research. John is a huge wrestling fan that comes across. Alex's artwork, it's got this raw, gritty, like crazy texture to it, and it just has an amazing ability to evoke an emotion or to evoke some kind of drama or action, right? You see his work on, of course, Sync and on Road of Bones and on Sea of Sorrows. I love this cat's work. The coloring is amazing. The lettering is top-notch. This book nails it. It's a perfectly crafted issue number 1 that introduces the characters, the concept, and it tells its own story. Even though it's kind of, you would think that it would be restrictive to work within the structure of Macbeth, but it actually is freeing this to be an elevated type story. I love this book. I thought it was absolutely amazing. The Crimson Cage, issue number 1. That's your pick of the week from AWA. Let's jump over to Marvel because we got a Marvel event. Haha, Devil's Reign, issue number 1. This is 1 of 6. There are going to be a lot of tie-ins, some one-shots, things like that. This is where you're going to get your essential crux of the story, which is basically, seems like it's just the next Daredevil story, but it kind of involves more people. Okay, let me just say this. It's a decently executed and rendered story. Artwork by Marco Cicchetto is top-notch. It's great. It's cool. The pacing, everything there is perfectly fine. The writing, the dialogue, it all works. The only problem is it's a bit familiar, but on a smaller scale. This reads just like Civil War on a smaller scale. Like, think Civil War, but just in New York, basically, something like that. But not Civil War, but the idea of like the Superhero Registration Act or something like that. Basically what's happened is Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, has been the mayor for a while. He bans superheroes in New York, and then all of a sudden all the heroes decide, yo, we gotta take care of this. All of a sudden they're all concerned that Wilson Fisk is the mayor. So that kind of threw me out of the story. Like I said, it's decently executed, but it's nothing mind-blowing because it's something that's should have already happened. The heroes going after Fisk, and then the idea is very, very, there are moments in here that are like straight like riffs on moments from Civil War. So that was a little disappointing. Inferno, issue number 3, this was not disappointing. Like, this is what I wanted. I wanted this book. I was waiting. Why did we get 1 and 2 before we get this? This was awesome. What this book does is it reveals a lot of stuff in a very cool, subtle, kind of Hickman-y way. And then it ends up revealing even more crazy stuff. And it just is so unfortunate that Hickman's about to just bounce out. We got the Destiny of X teasers and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I'm not saying that this is getting me excited for what's coming up in X-Men. But it's cool to see some more of these ideas of Hickman, that what he had to move the story forward. There's some big drop in revelations here. This was a well-paced issue. The artwork was pretty solid. There's a few artists on it, but it felt very consistent throughout. The characterization, it worked for me in this Krakoan age. It revealed a lot about Krakoa and Doug Ramsey. It revealed a lot about Orcus and their origins. I liked this issue a lot. Thought that was a pretty cool issue. Captain America Iron Man issue number 1. It's a mini series. It was all right, I guess. It was just okay. It didn't really do too much for me. So it's a team up between Iron Man and Captain America. Basically, there's this villain that's left over from that Falcon and Winter Soldier miniseries they did. Maybe it's the same writer. I don't know if it's Derek Landy. I mean, it was written just fine. It had a nice kind of pace. The artwork was serviceable, but it just didn't do anything to really stand out. But there's like this villain left over from that miniseries. Turns out Tony Stark slept with her, so he needs to deal with it, and Cap's there. I don't know. It was just all right. Cool Alex Ross cover, though. And we have the Death of Doctor Strange Blade. I was really looking forward to this because I'm a big fan of Dylan Burnett's artwork, and I think Danny Lore has a lot of potential as a writer. This issue, though, just didn't do much for me. You know, I'm always excited to get a Blade one-shot, and Danny understands Blade and seems to really enjoy and like that character, and I'm down for that, but the story just kind of felt bogged down. It didn't really feel like fresh. It didn't feel fun. It didn't feel energetic, and I was really kind of disappointed in Burnett's artwork. I feel like that kind of didn't fit the tone of what the book should have been, and I felt like it just got a little overly verbose at times, and maybe overstayed its welcome. Could have been trimmed down a little bit, maybe a different artist. It could have had a different effect reading this. But for a Blade one-shot, I'm glad we got one. It's a cool cover. Blade and Dracula team up against some vampires. How's it relate to the death of Doctor Strange? I mean, they talk about the death of Doctor Strange, so there's that. Then we got Hellions issue 18. This is the final issue of Hellions, which has been, consistently, the best X book out of this whole Krakoan age. For 18 issues, this has been a rather consistent, fun, doesn't reach too far, right? What does it say? What's the saying? It's like promise a little and deliver more, something like that. That's what Hellions has done. This has been really good. And this was a really solid ending. Like, that kind of wraps up the story of the Hellions in a rather nuanced way without sacrificing the humor that this book has become known for. So this book actually has some gut punchings, like emotionally, but it's also got some real fun, vibrancy stuff. Really good, subtle work with emotional character nuance in the midst of Hellions. I'm actually going to miss that book. Kind of feel bad for getting tired of it for the last couple issues. Then we got Fantastic Four Life Story, issue number 5. We're now in the oddies. The 2000s, Galactus shows up. So this is the big moment we've all been living for or looking forward to. This is what it's been building up to, right? This is the penultimate issue of Fantastic Four Life Story. This is basically telling an abbreviated, or not abbreviated, but it's kind of like taking the Fantastic Four story and telling it in real time, but it does differ a lot from the comic book, more so than the Spider-Man life story did. And at first I didn't really like that, but then I kind of dig this book. I like this alternate take on the Fantastic Four. Basically in the 60s, which was the first issue, second issues was 70s, but back in the 60s, they find out Galactus is coming. It's been building up. Here it is. The resolution to the Galactus, the big thing, I really liked it. All the pieces have been set up. It feels more like the world of the Fantastic Four. We're able to go into the legacy of it by having the characters age, have Franklin age. I like the little touches in here, like in the 2000s issue. They're wearing the Ultimate FF costume, so I thought that was kind of a neat touch. But I liked it. I thought it was pretty solid. And that cover might be cover of the week for me. I don't know. That's pretty dope. Then we got Amazing Fantasy, issue number 15. Kari Andrews wrapping up the story. This has been pretty solid. It's been decent. It's been consistent. Artwork here, you can feel maybe a deadline rush or something like that. But aside from that, it reads fine, and it's a cool conclusion to what's been an interesting story. Nothing that's I don't think it's really going to have an impact for a long, long time, but just reading it as a nice kind of what-if type tale has been pretty cool, right? Captain America, Black Widow, Spider-Man from different eras of the timeline show up on this like fantasy island type thing, and this is the big final battle. Lots of tragedy and all that kind of stuff. It was decent. Let's jump over to DC, where we have Batman 118. This is the start of the Joshua Williamson run, though I do believe it's probably just going to be a story, maybe 2, something like that. I don't really know. They haven't really announced if he's like the writer for the duration. However, Joshua Williamson's here. This is the first post-Tynion Batman story, and it was all right. It was pretty decent, I guess. Like, the idea is that Batman is leaving Gotham, and he's going off and doing the Batman Incorporated thing again, but there's an actual reason for that is revealed in the pages of here, and it's interesting enough. When it gets to the end, it has a really cool hook and a promise of an interesting showdown to come between a hero and a villain. Let's just say that. Something that really excited me. I thought that was cool. But the build up into it, I don't know, it was all right. The artwork is by Molina. Is that Alfred Molina? Anyway, the artwork's pretty solid. It's decent. It doesn't quite have the kinetic energy of, say, of course, Jorge Jimenez, but it's pretty decent. Yeah, it's Jorge Molina. Alfred Molina is the guy that plays Doc Ock. Anyway, Jorge Molina, the artwork it's decent, it's cool, it's rendered well. It just doesn't have a lot of dynamic kind of energy to it. The story is kind of like mediocre throughout until it kind of pulls itself together at the end. So as far as an introduction to the story, it was okay, but it did kind of hook me back in at the end, and I thought it was decent. I thought it was pretty decent. So let's just say that. Then we got the Swamp Thing issue number 10, originally meant to be the last issue, but of course we've already talked about this. It's been extended to 16 issues, and I'm glad, because if the book just ended here with nothing else, that would not have worked. But now that it says 10 of 16, this works. It is a finale of sorts to season 1, if you want to call it. I think Rom's been calling that on his social shout-outs, but this was a really solid issue. Mike Perkins, Mike Spicer, the art team, it's organic, it's textured, the artwork really works, has great composition throughout, and the story has a depth to it that something like Swamp Thing deserves because of the legacy of this character, of this title, and Rom V is just totally working in that and carving out his own niche as a Swamp Thing creator. Of course, it's a new version of the character. We have a big culmination here, a climatic clashing of forces, but then kind of a slow resolution that leads to the next 6 issues, and I'm very excited to check it out. So don't think of this so much as a conclusion, because it's not. It is on hiatus till March, but when it returns, it's going to pick up where we left off, and this was awesome. I thought it was really great. That's been one of the best books of the year. By the way, my top 10 comics of the year, that video will be dropping probably next week, so be looking forward to that. World of Krypton, issue number 1 of 6. It's a new miniseries. Robert Venditti, Michael Oeming, big Michael Avon Oeming fan. Artwork here is all right. It's decent enough. It's not some of his best work. It's meant to be bright and flamboyant, but it's just not quite meshing with the style for me. Story is all right. It's what it is. It's World of Krypton, so it's the story of Superman's family before Krypton explodes. Jor-El, his brother, his friends, Zod, and all this kind of stuff. So much of it feels off, and I mean, I guess it's just okay, but it's not a must-read. Let's just say that. World of Krypton is just okay. One Star Squadron, issue number 1 is here, of 6. Mark Russell and Steve Lieber. And so you know what you're going to get here. You're going to get like kind of a comedic take on superheroes, on the DC characters, and just kind of a little bit of a satirical take on society. That's what you get out of Mark Russell, and Steve Lieber really lends his talents to this kind of fun enough type thing. Basically what's happening is it's kind of like a Heroes for Hire. You got characters like Red Tornado and Power Girl, but then you got all these other characters that most people don't even remember. Like, who's this guy? He was like the Heckler or something. Like, what? The Heckler? I don't even know. So basically some really D-list heroes, right? Who are working for this, is a company where they take superheroes who aren't as busy as, say, Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman, or as rich like Batman, right? And they give them like these little side jobs, like they do cameo videos, they do public appearances and things like that, right? So it's really fun. It's not taking itself very seriously, so don't expect something serious. It's a nice kind of humor take on some DC stuff with a little bit of relevancy. I thought that was pretty cool. Then we got Dark Knights of Steel, issue number 2. Really liked this issue. I thought issue number 1 was a decent enough setup, but the momentum continuing to build here in issue number 2. Tom Taylor does these like Elseworlds tales fantastically, right? So this is kind of like a high fantasy take on some DC characters. You got the House of L, Superman, his family, Bruce Wayne, Batman's there, and then you got this other house, this other kingdom ruled by Jefferson, the Black Lightning and his kids, and these 2 warring houses, and all this manipulation and intrigue in the middle, and amazing artwork by I think it's Yasmin Putri. Artwork is freaking amazing. There's some big moments in here. There's some nice explosive type moments. I really liked it. The drama's there. I'm trying to find it's anyway. Putri is the artist. The artist is absolutely fantastic. I like this. I thought issue 2 was not saying an improvement, meaning that 1 wasn't very good, but I thought it was better than issue number 1. Let's just say that. The Arkham City, The Order of the World is here with issue number 3. Really liking this series. It's dark. It's twisted. The artwork by Danny and the coloring by Dave Stewart really make that tone and atmosphere work. The writing by Dan Waters, top notch, really great stuff. Vertigo type writing in a Batman book, but it's nitty, it's gritty, it's dirty. and it feels slimy, like in a good way, right? This new version of the 10-eyed man or whatever, the 10-fingered man, whatever his name is, the eyes on the fingers dude, like freaking fantastic, very creepy, would do Clive Barker proud, and not saying it's derivative of anything from Clive Barker, because it's not, but it's like that kind of twisted and creepy, man. Really cool stuff, really like it. It's basically about the escaped inmates from Arkham, the attack on Arkham Asylum during A-Day or whatever. Some of them are out there. There's a doctor trying to find them, but also maybe helping them and kind of maybe going a little mad herself, getting into some territory established by Morrison and McKean in Arkham Asylum, building on some of the supernatural elements, some of the twisted psychological elements of the Arkham inmates without using any of the big names. Fantastic stuff. Really, really liked it. Unless you consider Mad Hatter a big name. But he's not, I don't know if he's even in that issue. Crush and Lobo, issue number 7, the penultimate issue of the series that I've been absolutely adoring. This book has been so much fun. So Crush is the daughter of Lobo. Lobo is, let's be honest, not a good dad, right? That's obviously. She's obviously got her issues with that, but she's got a lot of internal issues about herself, right? She's going through like a temporary split with her girlfriend, and she goes off into space to try to find Lobo, who's in space prison, and he somehow tricks her into taking his place, and he escapes, and now she's being sent by the prison to hunt Lobo down. The confrontations in this issue, really fun stuff, great artwork, great coloring. Is it Tamara Bonvillain? Of course it's Tamara Bonvillain, one of the best colorists in the biz right now. Really loved it. The artwork popped, the story popped. It has a lot of charm to it, a lot of humor to it, and it still scratches that Lobo itch. Really like that. Then we got Green Lantern, issue number 9 here. Starting to lose myself in this book a little bit. Now, I know that Jeffrey Thorne is telling a 12-issue story, so we're nearing the end. We have some revelations here, and that was really cool, but it is time for me to sit back down, reread it, and get caught back up. I think this is definitely going to be something that benefits reading in a collected form, so I'm thinking about maybe if I can carve out some time sometime soon, kind of reread this, get caught back up, so I can really appreciate the finale of this 12-issue story. Then we got Superman Son of Kal-El Annual for 2021. It was an alright issue. I thought it was probably the best issue of Superman Son of Kal-El I've read so far. Has some interesting bits to it. Tom Taylor's the writer, Steve Pugh is the artist. Artwork is solid, it's fine. Really examines a little bit about the relationship of Lex Luthor and Superman, their adversarial relationship, and now Jonathan is inheriting Lex Luthor as a villain. Plus, it sets Lex Luthor back up into a certain set of where he needs to be in order to be utilized properly in the DCU. So I actually like this issue. It's the Return of Luthor. I thought it was decent. I thought it was the best issue of Superman Son of Kal-El I read so far. Then we got DC Horror Presents Soul Plumber issue number 3. It's starting to lose me. I really liked the first issue. I liked the crude vulgarity of the book, as well as what it was trying to say about some themes on, like, say, like religion and just other things like that, right? But it's just a one-trick pony. It's just on the same note. It's just doing the same approach, the same criticism on the same thing, and it's just pushing the vulgarity further, and it's just starting to lose me. Now, like, I love uber gross stuff, and I love poking fun at things, but this is just one note so far, 3 issues in, and it's really starting to lose me, and that book had a lot of solid promise. Let's jump over to Image, where we got the Silver Coin issue number 7. Loved this book. Almost a pick of the week. It was a pick of the week contender. This is a one-shot story. All of these are one-shot stories about a cursed silver coin that winds up in someone's possession. Things don't go right for them. This is the Vegas story where a dude gets the coin in Vegas, uses it, starts winning a lot of money. You know it's not going to end well. Every issue of this has been drawn by Michael Walsh. The artwork here is pretty cool. It's solid. It doesn't quite feel like some of the other artwork. So it's got a different vibe to it artistically. Maybe that's intentionally because of the story takes place in Vegas, which is supposed to be like, I guess, like plastic and fake and shiny and glamorous or something. I don't know. But it's written by Rom V, right? So that's fantastic. I was looking forward to this issue of Silver Coin more than any other. It did not disappoint. I loved it. There's a lot of there's a little bit, there's subtext there that's very on the level, but there's a lot of parallels between certain things that are really thematically. I thought it was really, really a great issue. Then we got Frontiersman issue number 3. This was an alright issue. It's probably the weaker so far, but I really do like what they're doing. It kind of gets a bit hard to follow at times, but in this one, so it's about this former superhero. He's old, he's retired, he's become like a hermit out in the woods. He's been somehow wrangled into sitting in a tree that they're trying to cut down and being a part of this like corporate protest or something, that these students are trying to use his popularity as an activist hero back in the day to make their cause known. So I like how it's exploring like all these different facets and sides of things. And in this one of his former villains comes and finds him in the tree and they have like a showdown. It was decent enough. Issue 1 was solid. Issue 2 was really good. And issue 3 took it a step back down, and it kind of felt a little bit disappointing, a little bit hard to follow, but at the same time pretty decent. I applaud any book that's doing like self-contained stories while building an overall narrative. That seems to be different now. Then I got this note because Diamond shorted us a lot of our books this week. So I also read Crossover issue number 10. This was the best issue of Crossover I've read outside of that Chip Zdarsky issue. I adored this issue. Brian Michael Bendis, Michael Oeming even do a bit where they write and draw a scene, and it's very appropriate because it's very much related to their comic book powers, and I loved it. I loved how meta this book is getting. It was already meta. It's getting even more meta. There's some revelations. There's some real fun bits. This was a great issue of Crossover. Made me laugh out loud a couple times. Made in Korea, issue number 6. This is the final issue. Kind of a cerebral issue, right? Where I wasn't quite getting what was going on in the issue. It was kind of losing me. There's a lot of like silent pages. I've been really liking this book, by the way. And the ending, I was like, this is a rather weird ending. And then when it gets to the ending, I'm like, oh, I get what they did. Really good book. I liked it. Made in Korea is one of those like sleeper books of the year, man. That was a really solid book. And I also read What's the Furthest Place from Here, issue number 2. Really liked it. If you liked issue number 1, you're going to like this one. We get to know a little bit more about the characters because they're out there now trying to find their missing friend. So we're also finding out more about this world. Some interesting concepts. It's basically a post-apocalyptic world that's inhabited all by kids, and they've all become these gangs. And these gangs are kind of centered around the buildings in which they live in. Right? It's really interesting concept, really interesting stories. Not too much really happens in this issue, but we do get more of the characters and we get more of the world. So I really liked it, thought it was solid, and I like this deliberate pace. The artwork is solid and the lettering is top notch as well. Then we go over to Vault and we got the Lunar Room, issue number 1. Now this is from Danny Lore, and they were the writer of the Blade one-shot that I didn't really like this week, but I really like Lunar Room. So it's about this woman. She used to be a werewolf, but she's not anymore. Then it's about this mage, and this mage has like the ability to bring out the fact that she used to be a werewolf and can kind of help her. I don't know. It's hard to describe. Cynthia Sinbreaker used to be a lot of things. A werewolf, a mob enforcer for a powerful mage, a name feared on every street of Solar City. She also there's like this wrestling scene. It's really interesting, but it had a nice kind of fun vibrancy to it. And I'm really excited to see where this book flourishes from that. So Lunar Room number 1 was a pretty solid debut issue. From Dynamite, we got Red Sonja issue number, 4? This is from Mirka Andolfo. I've been liking this series. The series basically is, in the first issues, Red Sonja is tasked with finding this missing young girl, right? And she finds her, so supposedly is taking her to her mother. The little girl kind of imprints on her and thinks that Red Sonja is her mother now. And it actually turns out that there is no mom, the family's not there, and it's just this like evil dude that wants this child because she's like a pyrokinetic, right? She can control power, like fire, and she has all this power, right? So she gets taken, and now in this one, Red Sonja and some other people, they're on the trail, right? And so this has some nice, fun Red Sonja action. I really like this book, and 4 issues in, I'm definitely sold on it. I'm going to continue reading that one. And I have another little note to myself, because once again, Dynamite shorted us some of her books, but I read Nyx issue number 2. Really love this book. Christos Gage is the writer. I really liked issue number 1, but issue number 2, if this is the tone of the book, this is going to be one of my favorite Dynamite books that I'm reading right now, outside of the Elvira books, but this was really fun. So Nyx is a Vampirella villain or something like that. I'm not very familiar with the character, but she is a human-demon hybrid who the god of chaos, the demon god of chaos, that's her father. So she goes to try to find her father and have to deal with this legacy, and it is so fun. Like, it's sexy, it's comedic, and it's also serious. So it's got a good nugget of a story there, but it's decorated, you can say, with really great pacing, really nice artwork, some sexy moments, and a lot of fun. A lot of like humor that the book's not kind of taking itself that seriously, which makes it work for me. That book is super, super fun. I also read James Bond, Chimeros. I didn't write down the issue number. I think that was issue number 3 or 4. I don't know. It's decent. It's fun. It's starting to get a little bit bogged down. Sometimes the writing just doesn't allow the book to be as actiony as it wants to be, but it's still a decent enough book. James Bond fans might want to check that out. And Vampyverse, issue number 4. So Vampyverse is kind of like into the Vampirella verse, or the one with Jet Li, but with Vampirella. So there's this one version of Vampirella going around to all these different universes, killing every other version so that she can become the ultimate powered Vampirella or something, right? So we got all these different versions of Vampirella teaming up to hunt her across the Vampyverse, right? In this one, we get introduced to Vampazilla, which is like a kaiju version, and that's pretty awesome. We also get this retro 50s sci-fi version of Vampy, and we get like a cave woman, savage Vampy, and I really, really dug it. Thought that was great. Then we got By the Horns, issue number 8. I looked on Diamond's website, because we get our Scout books from Scout directly. I got this. I looked on Diamond's website, said it dropped on November 24th, but then the creators didn't get their copies till the 28th. So I don't know if this is officially out yet, but everywhere I look says it came out a couple weeks ago. But let me just tell you this. This is the final issue of the first arc of By the Horns, right? And what a fantastic conclusion. This has been one of the best, most slept on, underappreciated, underrated books of 2021. This is one of the best books of 2021. Spoilers, it's probably going to be on my top 10 list somewhere. This book blows me away. Amazing artwork, great character design, a great story, a great world and characters that have been built up. Oh my goodness, man. Naso and Moore and Tabakuro, they do a phenomenal job with this book. This is a conclusion satisfying on a story level as far as the nuance of the emotion and the drama elements building up, but also just very satisfying as an action adventure. Really great stuff, great moments. It makes you spin the book around to do those centerfolds, kind of like very 90s extreme. That usually annoys me. It didn't here because I really felt like you needed those moments to be bigger and you needed to experience it in a different way. This was an expertly crafted final issue of the first arc because it has been upgraded to an ongoing series. And also on the back, there's a quote from yours truly about this book. And the quote is, By the Horns is one of the best books on the shelves. I got a new one. By the Horns is one of the best books of 2021. So there you go. That book's awesome. Thank you all for that. The pull quote in a comic book. I think that's my first one in a comic book. I've been on promotional material before, but in a comic, that's cool. From Boom, we have Buckhead issue number 1. This book was all over the place. I didn't really get it. I didn't understand. It's about this like video game. These people have tattoos. Yo, I don't even really remember. It's a boombox book, so it's a young adult reader. It's like a young reader's book. Not all ages, but like young adult. It just didn't really work for me. I found it to be kind of muddy and a little bit incomprehensible. Artwork was decent, I guess, but it was all right. Then we have Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 82, which is actually Mighty Morphin number 14. We were shorted the cover A, so I also get these legacy covers to keep the numbering and the old school logo. Anyway, the Eltarian War, what more can I say? I love it. Feels like some scenes are out of place here, like the opening scene should be placed later because that happens, and then we get a scene before that later on in the book. That was a little weird, but we're after Zordon. Zordon's been destroyed, allegedly. Billy and the Blue Emissary are trying to find him, get him back, and you see possibly the results of that, and it's pretty cool, actually. You know, if I still collect Power Ranger action figures, that'd be a cool one to get, but I've given up Power Ranger action figures. Cold turkey. I feel better than ever. I feel like pieces of my soul are missing. Anyway, Power Ranger's been a fun book. It kind of meandered around for a little bit. Then it's gotten back together with this big Eltarian War. I'm digging it. I like it a lot. Basilisk is here with issue number 5. Been a long time. I was already on the fence with this book because it's interesting enough. It's written well. It's got a great pace to it. The artwork is solid. But it just hasn't really quite hooked me yet. And then to have such a delay. And then we finally get issue 5. And I'm sure it was the printer delays and all that kind of stuff, right? Not their own fault, I'm sure. But Basilisk not having a big gap between issue 4 and 5 didn't help. I'm reading the book and I'm digging it. I'm liking it. But at the same time, I feel so disconnected from the story that I just don't feel at home in it for some reason. So maybe I need to either reread or give it up. We'll see what happens. Should reread it because it's not going to take long. From Dark Horse, we have Daisy. Daisy issue number 1, 1 of 5. This was a weird one. So it's about, because, the idea of the Nephilim and like the giants, the angels that have relations with human women, and they had this race of giants, and it's kind of picking up on that years later. But it's very on the nose, but at the same time vague. Like, it's fuzzy, it's hard to get into, and they try to do like this psycho-esque type thing, and it just doesn't work, doesn't land well for me. So Daisy #1, I don't know, I didn't really dig on it. Then we got Tales of Mother F. Goose. So this is a crime book written by Frank Thierry, with artwork by Joe Eisma. And it's a graphic novel, plus, prestige format size or whatever, $6.99. Tales of Mother Effin' Goose, basically. It's supposed to be Mother Goose stories by way of Quentin Tarantino. This one didn't land for me, right? So I honestly think this book would have benefited. So there are characters in here that relate to like characters in like kid stories, Mother Goose rhymes, things like that, right? But they're humans, and it's just kind of an interesting connection, I guess. I think this book would have benefited if they were actually like cartoon animals and characters. Yeah, I don't know. But it just didn't quite work for me. But I know a lot of people are anticipating this. But for me, I was excited for this. But it didn't really live up to my expectation. I think it would have been benefited by the Stray Dogs treatment or something. Anyway, that's what I read. That's what I thought about it. What are you reading? What are you digging? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and join us over at popculturephilosophers.com for podcasts, blogs, and a whole lot more. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep on reading. Station.